And as we always say, it's an ADD world out there. So it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to drop off a checkout page. So it's always good to retarget your customers and let them know, like, hey, don't don't forget you were interested in buying this.
Welcome to the Bright Commerce Podcast. Welcome back to the Bright Commerce Podcast. This is episode 25, our first AMA episode where we tackle your burning questions about e-commerce and digital marketing. I'll be asking Carlos, our co-host here, some of the most common questions we see in the industry. And then later, Carlos will flip the script and ask, and I'll answer them. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Question number one, what is the biggest misconception about e-commerce and digital marketing right now?
All right, that's a good one. I would say a lot of people think of e-commerce success just being about traffic. Basically, get more clicks and everything happens automatically. Reality is really more about measuring success. So you got to have good metrics. You need to understand your customer acquisition costs, lifetime value, conversion rate. Ideally, you need to understand all of these metrics for every stage of your funnel and which channels ultimately produce meaningful returns. And that's ultimately how you can scale predictively. It's not just, hey, I got my store, let me throw some paid traffic, and hopefully things will go great from there. It's really just comes down to having the right metrics, making decisions around those metrics.
Side question for you, Carlos, on this. So do you find that sometimes you have to learn more about someone's business than that actual client knows about their business?
I wouldn't say you have to know more. You just have to ask the right questions. Goals. Also, a lot of times during discovery on an e-commerce project, we try to dive into the avatar or persona of who's buying the product or service to either try to minimize friction during checkout, increase customer awareness or customer knowledge on the product, how it's going to help them, how they can buy it. I'll give you a really good example right now. We are working with a bird food company and they have a lot of amazing products, but when customers go to their website, they're not sure which product to buy, whether it's like, hey, it's a new customer that is interested in feeding this new kind of food to their bird, so they don't know where to start, or based on what type of bird the customer has, right? Because some birds only like certain foods or vice versa. Or if your bird has a medical condition, what do you give the bird based on medical condition, right? These are questions or funnels that we go through, customer journeys to better understand these things and ultimately reduce friction during the buying process.
This is a dumb question. On that bird website, do people have like ostriches? Like, do they have food for ostriches that they order online? I don't know. That sounds dumb. I just want to know.
That's an awesome question. To my knowledge, no,
Okay.
there's no food supplement for ostriches on this particular website. This is ultimately for the consumer. So if you have like a finch or a parrot or a cockatiel, no, these aren't like zoos that are coming in to buy food.
All right. Well, here let's go to question number 2. Which metrics should e-commerce brands really focus on?
Okay, so from an e-commerce standpoint or any conversion standpoint, really, the main thing you need to be worried about would be things like CAC or customer acquisition cost. So that's how much you've paid to get a customer to buy on your website. This is either through advertising channels or SEO channels, anything there that brought somebody to your website. What did it cost you for them to actually go through checkout? Big metric is also LTV, lifetime value of a customer. So it's not just a matter of a customer coming once to your website, or maybe that is the case, but if you have a product or service that you can resell or sell add-ons or upsells or cross-sells, whatever the case is, you need to figure out a way to get that LTV up or lifetime value, meaning like, hey, once we have a customer that now engaged with our brand, they purchase from our brand, how do we get them to buy again ultimately? You should also, yeah.
And a side question there on lifetime value, because I think what used to happen, let's say early 2000s and before, is you used to online, you got sales because there wasn't a lot of competition. So I think a lot of people think when they started advertising, or now anyway, that they automatically make money on the first sale, where that's where the LTV really does come in. Because sometimes if you're selling, let's say, a product and someone buys it every month, you might not make money until the fourth time that person buys that product. So that's where lifetime value really kicks in, and you have to understand that metric as a client or owner, in my opinion, because you really need to figure out from a marketing standpoint how much you really have to spend before you see a profit. And I think that's a real good metric that most store owners, especially startups, don't really understand.
Yeah, and CAC and LTV are very much correlated, right? CAC is how much you pay to acquire the customer, and then LTV is how many more times can you ultimately sell to them.
Yeah. Which one time sales kind of is a rough business when it comes to that.
Very busy. Well, maybe like, well, yeah, I think as a general rule of thumb, yeah, yeah. Other things you should be looking at too is conversion rates. So what is your conversion rate on across different platforms, whether it's TikTok Shop, whether it's Amazon, whether it's eBay, whether it's your own personal store. Also, ROAS or return on ad spend. So how much are you actually getting back from that particular channel in terms of ROI is important to track as well. Repeat purchase rate. How often is a customer coming back? How much more are they buying from you every time they come back? Meaning, like, is the average order value going up or is it going down? These are metrics you can run or track over time. Also, here's a big one. It's cart abandonment. So whether it's an email reminder or a retargeting campaign that follows you across different channels, so social media, that's always important to have. And as we always say, it's an ADD world out there. So it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to drop off a checkout page. So it's always good to retarget your customers and let them know, like, hey, don't don't forget you were interested in buying this.
Our next question is question 3. How do you integrate paid advertising with long-term organic growth like SEO?
Love this question. We get this a lot. We actually, a lot of times we don't ask the question. We actually present it as a strategy. Paid ads are awesome because they get you known quickly. You don't have to rely on organic rankings. You can get right in front of the right audience right away. Once those paid channels become ROI positive, you understand which keywords or what's triggering your audience to convert. You can shift a lot of this paid traffic to your SEO campaign or SEO traffic, meaning that you can then grab a lot of that data. For example, if you're on a Google AdWords campaign, you know which keywords are converting great or the highest. You can then pivot and start optimizing your website for SEO traffic. So you can optimize content and keywords. Maybe you can improve your site architecture. You can buy or address getting more backlinks to these particular pages to gain that domain authority so that you ultimately rank higher on Google organically. Um, and again, the good thing there is that it's not a guessing game, because you're already addressing your top performers based on paid traffic.
All right, we're going on question number 4 here. How should companies decide which digital channel deserves more of?
Very straightforward. I mean, it all starts or it all like ties right back into metrics. So you need to be able to decipher, which channels produce the most valuable customers, right? So that all falls back into CAC, LTV or CAC to LTV ratio. And then, ultimately you make the decision or where you're going to cut or where you're going to add more budget to based on those metrics I just described.
I have just a quick question on that. I think a lot of clients don't have reporting probably even set up correctly. So that's where I know with my team, I'm sure your team would come in and really organize that, because without the data, you can't even really make a decision yet on what to do with the budget or a direction. You have to be able to, assess that data. So if they don't have any, you have to take some guesses, but I think those guesses have to be calculated. So if there is no data or anything that they've done yet, you still have to use Google Analytics and certain like Google Search Console, whatever, to see what kind of traffic and activity on the site. Make really, I think, good changes for that. But I'm going
Yeah,
to
and
get on to.
it's
Sorry.
difficult. It's difficult too because even when you have all the right data tracking in place, it's never 100% accurate. I'm sure there's always discrepancies everywhere, but at least, you have an idea or a map so you can navigate better where to allocate budget to is what it comes down to. You're not just flying by the seat of your pants. You're making educated decisions is what it comes down to.
Yeah. Like a long time ago, like Mad Men, like the series Mad Men, they actually made really educated guesses in a lot of ways. I mean, we have a lot of data now that allows us to make accurate guesses, when it comes to online sales. And I think that's a huge benefit we have in today's market. Question number 5. What's the role of automation and MarTech when scaling e-commerce?
Yeah, so in terms of MarTech or marketing technology, these are things you need to be looking at that you should be using: CRMs, analytics, automations, email platforms. This is ultimately the foundation that allows you to scale these systems, right? Ultimately, these tools reduce manual labor, all your automations via email platforms, for example, reduce manual labor. All the analytics stuff will give you real-time insights.
What's my favorite platform?
Or
Come on,
you
you
like
should
to
know.
Yeah, you like to use this, SaaS tool. What is it called?
That's well, it's kind of a SaaS tool. It's relational
The
database
Air the
tools.
the Airtable, right? That's what you're into?
Yeah, I love that. You can connect everything, every CRM, every email platform, your bank account, your credit card, whatever, right into that system. Now it has AI too, which it has Gemini has AI built into it. So you could do a lot of cool stuff. Well, those questions came from real industry concerns, but now, Carlos, it's your turn to ask me. Let's flip the script here.
Alright, here we go. So, what is one action item an e-commerce brand can implement this week, let's say, to improve conversions?
So I think an overall strategy for e-commerce site, if you really want to look at changing the dial and really going for more profit and making money is going to be your conversion rate. And by doing that, there's tons of things that you could do from changing the actual conversion rate, right? Like one thing is going to be reducing cart abandonment. So if people are going through your funnel and they're stopping at certain points, you can help with that. So if they get to the checkout page and they didn't check out, but it is an existing customer, for example, you could fire off an email to that customer with a coupon of 10% off, something like that. It says, hey, you still got something in your bag. If you check out now, you get 10% off. And that's a way to, especially if you're paying for that customer to get that sale. So even though you gave them 10% off, it's better than losing the whole cost per acquisition on that particular customer. So that's a great way to, I think, improve that. Trust signals, literally just having, secured or we're a partner with or trusted by, or, having those on key pages, whether it be the product page or checkout, which is probably the most important, will help those decisions, I think, in checking out. You can also even test. That's always a great A/B test to do is just literally trust signals, SSL badges, money back guarantees, customer reviews, all that kind of good stuff. And then, just ensuring that you have a simple path to purchase, right? So, like, if someone comes to your website and let's say you have a lot of product, and it's very hard to find that particular product that you have, or say it's a top selling product, but it's buried somewhere on your site, just to get to it is kind of rough. So you got to look at your homepage as, let's say, the same way Walmart does its aisles. When they come in, they have a whole strategy to that. When they come into your homepage, you want to ensure that there are paths to the most important stuff. And on a homepage, I typically say that you want three ways to get to something. So if they come to your homepage, you have different buying personas like analytical buyers, impulse buyers, and what you want to do is, like, in the main nav is obviously going to be your quick impulse buyers, and go right to the main nav, find something they need, go to that page. It's not, if the information is not easily available, like having a mega menu or showing like the overall navigation on the site, that could be a problem. If they go from the navigation to a main category page, you're going to want to have filters and things like that, so it's easy for them to get those, find those products or filter down to those products. So making that path to purchase, I think, is very important. And then, a quick bonus win is looking at mobile. The majority of, I would say, the 80% of every client I work with always thinks about desktop, when the reality is everyone's on mobile that buys from them. So you really want to look at the mobile checkout experience completely different. Don't like say, oh, I'm going to do responsive and it's just going to be based off the desktop. You really need to look at both experiences. You can code nowadays to have a mobile and desktop experiences without hindering the way it's built. So I really recommend taking a look, a great deal of time looking at mobile and ensuring that that's optimized well. So, and you don't have to be a big developer, or you have to be a code developer to see some of that. You can literally just look at your mobile site and say, yeah, this looks pretty bad. I got to make these changes. So, and
Yeah,
what I think.
I would say a quick win too in terms of reducing car abandonment or reducing friction. Apple Pay and Google Pay.
Oh
I think
yeah.
those two are huge these days. And if
Or
if you have a
the Stripe one, what is that one called? Link? I think it's called Link.
yeah. So Stripe does have Link, which is kind of like the response to Shop. So
Yeah.
Shopify, Shop Pay.
Oh, yeah, that's another one.
But aside from those, you also have Google Pay and Apple Pay, which for the most part, with the top tier merchant or payment gateway solutions out there, they're pretty easy to implement these days.
Yeah.
All right. So here's one for you, man. So when a campaign is not performing, what's your first diagnostic move?
So I say start with data, not creative. So I think a lot of clients are like, something's wrong or the look and feel on my site. When the reality is that that might not be the issue. So I think data integrity checks is really what you need to do. And you kind of, hit on that in the first few questions you answered, Carlos. I think one is, making sure your reporting is sound, your pixels are firing, your Google tags are there, your meta tags are there, your TikTok tags are there, wherever you're selling or advertising, making sure those pixels are firing and that they're tagged completely correct, whether it be the page view, purchase, firing, all that stuff. So a lot of people don't really do server side tracking, which is first party data. That's the term that's being used now, first party data. And what that basically is you're storing the event data on a server that these companies like Meta or Google can access the visitor data and make better machine learning choices on their end, save you probably about 30 to 40% of the budget if you're not doing it. So it's sad to say that, Google doesn't make that a requirement because they don't care. They don't mind you throwing your money out the window with, not as optimal, ads being served to the correct people. So they'll take your money regardless if you do it or not. And then also just verifying your attribution window. Are you looking at 1 day click, 7 day click, view throughs, the attribution settings, and making sure performance is correct for that machine learning. So if the data isn't clean, I would stop, fix the measurement before changing anything else. So that's the one thing. Then I would probably look at your audience relevance. So as you talked about, Carla, just finding out who the customer is first, finding that buying persona. That is really crucial, I think, in a lot of ways, because that is, if you look at Meta, you really have to do your audience. So you have to say to Meta, "This is my audience." So you have to know what that is, and you got to make sure that those audiences are not overlapping in campaigns. You got to make sure the audience is correctly saturated. That means it's targeting the right people at the right time, at the right place. So that's really, I think, important. Also, creative fatigue. Is I think a silent killer in all of this. So, if you look at rising frequency and declining in CTR, that would be a signature of creative fatigue. That means the ad hasn't changed. The audience is, pretty much exhausted from that ad. So that is when you would probably say, okay, let me test the creative. We've had this up for months. It's the same thing, whether it be an ad or a graphic, a video, whatever. You don't keep the same thing going. You do want to test, but if I am a firm believer, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like if you optimize the campaign and you're doing well and you got a good solid conversion rate, don't start it until something changes. Some people will think, oh my gosh, I gotta change this. I need to make more money. But at the end of the day, once it's optimized, the campaign, it's optimized. What you need to think about is going to new channels. So if you optimize Google, then you would go to Meta, then you would go to TikTok, then you go to LinkedIn, wherever you can to find more lemons to squeeze. That's what you should do when it comes to, I would say the campaign itself. And then as you mentioned, diagnostics matters. So, really checking the data itself, doing continuous tests on your channels, your advertising channels, which ones you're working in. And then with AI now, I'll give you a perfect example of what I've done with, let's say, schools is that I'll take data over a span of 12 months of advertising on Google Ads, let's say, and Facebook. see where all the fluctuation is, between those, and then come up with a plan that would tell me based on this data what mathematically works for the best month, the best day of the week, the best allocation of budget based on the cost per lead for both channels. So that what that means is that some months you would spend more in Google or Facebook, depending on how, the previous year's data. So there's a lot I think that people can do there, particularly with AI, to automate that process and that thinking. AI can really help, make you be very smart, when it comes to processing a ton of data quickly. So that's something I would recommend there. So, and then I would say the last question is to ask yourself before you change anything, what do I know for certain versus what I'm assuming? You know what I mean? I think people make a lot of assumptions that will dig a complete hole and could break the campaign. I've seen where clients were very adamant about changing something that was working. And then once it was changed, it killed the campaign. Getting back to what it was is much harder than just, leaving it alone and letting it run its course of doing well.
All right, here's a good one for you. How do you handle attribution when multiple channels contribute to success?
Okay. So that's where I think I think, well, using multi touch or data driven attribution models, look at the upper funnel, mid funnel, and lower funnel assists that can accurately attribute with your current setup. So, give you a good example, and Carlos, you know about this, is like the upper funnel. When you're looking at your funnel, let's say you're advertising on Google Ads and you're doing with the PMax campaign, what it will try to do is find based on all their channels, Gmail ads, display, YouTube, it will try to go the top of the funnel to get the touch points there before it goes to the bottom of the funnel, which would be like say standard search. And what that does from a PMax campaign, why those can be more successful over search is it lowers the cost per click, it lowers the cost per conversion because those touch points in the other areas that found that person, even though they didn't convert there, they ended up converting at the lower part of the funnel, let's say on a standard search later on, which end up being a lower cost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think that if you break down the funnel, you can break it down into like three general stages, which is tofu, mofu, or bofu. So top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel.
That'd be like a good marketing T-shirt if you're at a trade show.
Like that, yeah. Right. What is a common mistake e-commerce businesses make with their digital budgets?
Well, they advertise in all the wrong places. So I think, well, first off, I think from a budget standpoint, every channel is a little bit different, right? When you look at Google, the way that you would calculate a budget for, let's say, a new advertiser, one that just wants to start advertising in Google, is you'd have to do some research on keyword terms, how much a cost per click is, what are industry standard conversion rates for that channel, and then try to calculate, which would be an error of about 40% or 50%, right? Of what that CPA may be, what that budget should be. What I typically do when I start a budget for, let's say, Google Ads, is that we do tests, small tests to figure out what is the actual cost per click, and figure out what those costs are. That's a lot better than throwing, throwing $500 on a small campaign in a smaller market to figure out what the costs are versus throwing $10,000 at a larger market and see what sticks. And I think big agencies are notorious for doing that. They'll look at campaigns a lot less. They'll throw a ton of money at it, saying, "Oh, you have to spend at least $20,000 a month to penetrate the market." Like, depends on what market. Like, you can actually spend a little bit, figure out what the cost is, and that will save you a lot, I think, in the long run versus throwing a lot, whatever at you know, throwing the whole kitchen sink at the budget to see what actually works and what doesn't. So I think, brands get into serious trouble when trying to scale because they'll scale without improving efficiency first and just accelerate the waste. So if you're converting at 1% and you triple your ad budget, you're spending 3 times as much to maintain a 1% conversion rate, which is kind of stupid. You should actually at that 1%, if that's your starting point, especially if you take over an account, figure out what I can do to increase the conversion to 5%. That means you made the client 5 times more money with the budget, and you were actually not touching the campaigns or anything. You were touching the creative, you're touching, the website. And it could be as simple as the speed of the website. That could actually even change conversion quite a bit. Going back to the whole, improve conversion rate. I also believe that diminishing returns are real. So if you scale spend on a platform, you move from, let's say, your best audience to your second best or third best. The CPMS will go up, relevance goes down, if efficiency drops, and you have to account for all that for that now and how your budget works. So brands that scale profitability do it in phases. They optimize efficiency first, get the funnel converting, get the creative working, get the measurement clean like we talked about, and then they pour fuel on it to scale. So that's what I would recommend.
What's one underrated area that brands often overlook?
I think the most ignore let's say is the part of the funnel. I think every brand gets obsessed over getting a sale. Ad spend, landing pages, checkout optimization, all point to one moment, the purchase, right? So I think when a customer buys, and most brands essentially, when a customer buys, most brands actually just go silent. So I think a big missed opportunity is, finishing up that funnel, that customer journey experience, and ensuring that, you're going to get those customers coming back for a second sale. And that will be, your welcome page is an opportunity. The receipt is an opportunity. A follow-up email a week later, like, how was your product? Do you mind getting a rating, is an opportunity. So I think those, the post-purchase is very underrated. I think the majority of e-commerce sites that I've worked with don't really look at their customer journey experience as a whole. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great exercise to map that out. I'm a visual guy, as you know. I like flow charts, like whiteboards. Now we don't use whiteboards; we use Figma boards that are not white and you don't have a marker, but still same concept. You map out that experience, and I guarantee you, from the homepage all the way to, you know, 2 weeks later after purchase, we sent them a great email, point. Throughout that, you'll find ways to interact with your customers to improve not only customer support, but I also think the sales itself. Because in that customer journey experience too, you could upsell. You can upsell at checkout. You can upsell with the follow-up email 2 weeks later with 20% off the next purchase. There's a million things I think you could do from a post-purchase experience that would help.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, ultimately improve LTV, right? Newsletter, retargeting on social media websites, just to keep that engagement going.
Yeah, it's the LTV math, man. It's like trying to figure out that lifetime value, like you said, and ensuring that it goes up. Because if they only bought once in 3 years and you sell a product that could be sold every month, you've essentially lost, like, in count correctly, that's 36 times. No, 35 times throughout those 3 years.
We're doing the wrap up.
Well, that wraps up the AMA for episode 25. Thanks everyone who sent questions. We'll be getting back to you with some insights on growing e-commerce brands and digital marketing systems.
If you ever want to send us any questions, maybe get into more detail on what we covered today, or some new questions, feel free to reach out. A lot of times we go through the comments and we'll post them on here. All right, see you on the next one, Judd.
See ya.